Welcome back to another episode of the Unique Pivot Podcast. Today I want to talk about trauma, what it is, what it isn't, why and how we store it in our body, and how it actually can continue to create anxiety, chronic anxiety in our life. As most of you guys know, I lived with chronic anxiety. My anxiety was actually what led me to addiction. I turned to those pain pills because it brought me peace in my body. It brought me safety in my body. And that's when I finally learned to have compassion for myself. And that's when the shame finally went away. When I realized how could I be mad at myself or ashamed of myself for just wanting to feel at peace, for just wanting to feel happy, for not wanting to feel anxious, for not wanting to be constantly worried and not being able to sleep and not being able to have good digestion. How could we be mad about ourselves for that? We do everything for a reason. We do everything the best we can with what we know. And once I really just started discovering how the brain works and how trauma affects so many things in our life, I just got such big aha moments. So today I want to talk about what trauma is and what trauma isn't. I know that most of us have been taught that trauma is some big, huge event that changed the trajectory of your life. It was something tragic, like losing somebody you love, going through different types of abuse. And yes, that absolutely is trauma. But what trauma really is, it's not the magnitude of the event. It's actually the inability for you to be able to process it and release it. When we don't release trauma and process it, it actually gets stored in our bodies. So childhood is where a lot of our core trauma comes from. Because if you think about it, as children, we didn't have the resources to process and release trauma. I mean, I'm barely discovering that now at 40 years old. We just weren't taught that. So trauma could be something and affect you. Let's think of a time maybe when you were in elementary school and maybe you got picked last. Remember how we would pick teams like in PE, and you almost felt like you weren't wanted or you weren't good enough if you were picked last. I can remember that feeling. I can still feel that feeling in my body when I was picked last or I wasn't picked first, or thinking, oh my God, I hope I don't get picked last. I hope I don't get picked last, because I gave that a meaning that nobody liked me, or that I wasn't good enough, or that they liked others better than me. We give it all kinds of meanings because we just weren't taught how to regulate our nervous system and how to regulate stuff like this. So by not releasing this trauma, which is actually the emotions, it actually stays stored in our body. So when you think about what trauma is, and when you feel something traumatic, what happens? Your heart starts racing, your palms start sweating, maybe your chest starts pounding. And also, this is how most of us feel when we're dealing with anxiety. So what really and truly anxiety is just everything that's currently stored in your body that's not allowing you to be regulated in your body, not allowing you to be regulated in your nervous system. Our body's nervous system is meant to keep us safe. If you think back to our ancestors, they literally had to be ready to fight or flight at any given moment. They were literally being chased by lions and chased by bears, or they had to make sure that they were on alert and not eating a berry that maybe had poison. So our primitive ways of being, our ancestors' way of being, they needed to constantly be on alert. They needed to constantly be in fight or flight because it was actually making them make sure that they were keeping safety in their life, making sure that they were keeping their family alive, their children alive. And our world has evolved so much. We don't have to be on constant alert, waiting for the lion around the corner or the tiger around the corner. But our brains just haven't evolved yet. we haven't been taught all this stuff to actually rewire our brain, because we can actually rewire our brain. That's the basis of all the work I teach. It's about you having everything you need inside you to reprogram your mind, to reprogram your body so that you create safety, so that you have peace. And then you're able to have energy and beliefs in yourself to support you to create the life that you deserve. And if you think about it, think about all the bad news that comes flying our way right now in today's time. Everywhere you look, bad news. Social media, there's always something bad going on in this world. And there's a whole reason behind that, why they're constantly putting bad news, and that's a whole other episode. But if trauma is caused by us not having the ability to process and release all these events coming towards us, that's when we store trauma in our body. And since we physically cannot process and release everything flying at us in today's world, every time you turn on the TV, I mean, every time that's why I don't watch the news anymore. I used to watch Dateline every Friday night. That was like something that me and my husband, every Friday night, it was Dateline. And now that I realize how that impacts my nervous system, I no longer watch Dateline. I no longer watch the news. So this is where you really get to start being aware of everything that you're allowing to yourself to be exposed to every single day, because all this is subconscious. You don't even realize that your body is not being able to process this trauma, release this trauma. So all of this trauma and all this bad news and all this bad things going on in the world today, if you are not aware of it and you don't have the resources to process it and release it, then guess what? All this trauma in your body keeps increasing and keeps increasing, and more trauma keeps getting stored in your body. So anytime that this trauma is triggered in your body believes that your body is in a life or death situation. Even though it could be maybe you like somebody and you started dating them and maybe they don't text you back right away. So right away you start thinking the worst and your body goes into fight or flight. You know, that feeling where it's like, oh my God, they're not calling me back. Oh my God, I wonder if they don't like me. Oh my God. Right away we think worst case scenario, because again, that's your body trying to protect you. But your body doesn't realize that that's not a life or death situation. So your body is going to go into fight or flight. With that, your body actually releases hormones, which is adrenaline and cortisol. And if you're constantly setting off that adrenaline and cortisol because you're not aware of regulating your nervous system, you don't have the resources to regulate your nervous system, we only have so much adrenaline and cortisol each day. That's why our sleep is so important, because we have to regenerate. Everything replenishes while we sleep. If you continue to be triggered because you have stored trauma and you're constantly being triggered into anxiety, which is again just that feeling of fight or flight, that feeling of survival where you feel like your heart racing, your palms are sweaty, you may have like buzzing in your head. If you do not release the stored trauma in your body, this is where that chronic anxiety loop cycle continues over and over again. And you may be, I know I was told by like family members, well, just don't think about it. You just think too much, or, you know, you're just an anxious person. So then you start identifying as that anxious person, and it's not, you're not an anxious person. You're not broken. It's just that we weren't taught how to regulate our bodies, regulate our nervous system. And every single one of us has stored trauma in our body until we are taught how to release this trauma. And this is why healing through your body is the only way to truly heal your anxiety at the root cause. You can't talk your way out of anxiety. Sure, you can go to the doctor and they're probably going to prescribe you anti-anxiety meds, but that's just putting a Band-Aid on your anxiety, right? That's just, you're treating the symptom, you're not treating the root cause. So the root cause of your anxiety, again, anxiety is just everything that is dysregulating your nervous system. When you go through a traumatic event, especially as a child, trauma actually affects our brain. It actually changes our brain. What trauma does is it actually enlarges the amygdala. So what this does is, now that you've experienced all this trauma, and if you've never released it and it's stored in your body and it's changed your brain, your amygdala now becomes hypersensitive, meaning that it's hyperactive to any perceived threat. So it's basically like living on edge, like looking out and thinking worst case scenario for everything, because the amygdala is a part of your brain that mobilizes that energy, that mobilizes that fight or flight energy. So if there's stored trauma and your brain has been affected by trauma that's never been released, now your amygdala is literally like on even more alert than a brain that's regulated, because it's just your brain's job is to try to protect you. Your brain's number one job is to keep you safe, to keep you alive. So now your amygdala is constantly on edge. It's constantly thinking worst case scenario. And now it's being triggered even more. So then more and more trauma is coming into your body. And if you don't know, or you don't have the capacity to process it and release it, then guess what? More and more trauma. It's like stacking trauma on top of trauma on top of trauma on top of trauma. So this is why it is so important that you really understand how trauma is stored, why trauma is stored, and that healing only happens through the body, because we cannot talk our way out of this trauma. It's like, I remember being constantly told, you just think too much, you just worry too much, quit worrying about what people think. And nobody wants to live that way. I know that you definitely don't want to live that way, because I lived that way for so many years, but we just weren't taught. We weren't taught how to regulate our nervous system. And what the beauty of this is that it's never too late. There is proven science, there's proven research that your body and your brain, your nervous system and your brain, your subconscious mind, never stops having the ability to change. It never stops having the ability to be reprogrammed. It's called neuroplasticity. So I really wanted to share this with you. I know living with anxiety and chronic anxiety can really take a huge toll on your life. If you're turning to something outside of you, whether it's alcohol, drugs, food, anything outside of you, just know that nothing's wrong with you. You're just looking for a way to find peace in your body, to find peace in your life. But I promise you, there's a better way. There's a permanent way, a healthy way. And so the only way to heal anxiety is to heal it at the root cause. And again, that's releasing everything from your body that's stopping your nervous system from feeling regulated. Our nervous system is here to protect us. Our nervous system is a tool that we do need. We do need the ability to fight or to flight when we are in real danger, when our life is truly at stake. But our body does not know the difference if you're literally trying to run from somebody chasing you in a dark alley, or if you're at work and your boss walks right by you and he doesn't acknowledge you. So then you think, oh my God, he doesn't like me. Oh my God, am I going to lose my job? Oh my God, what's wrong with me? Your body in both scenarios, your physiology is affected the same exact way. Your physiology and your neurology is affected in the same exact way, whether you're running for your life or feeling neglected by somebody, or a phone call hasn't been returned by somebody you like, or fear of maybe having an interview for a new job. Your body doesn't know the difference. So again, I just want to remind you that everything you need is inside you. And so I truly just invite you to just continue the awareness. Awareness is the first step in regulating your nervous system. Really be aware of how your body is reacting when you feel triggered. Do you go to fight? Do you go to flight? That's the first place we go. That's a sympathetic nervous system. Then there's also freeze, when your body knows it can't get away. The freeze stay is a way of just keeping us safe and taking us out of our body so we no longer have to feel that pain. That's why you may have heard of somebody who went through a physical abuse or physical altercation, and they say, I left my body. I left my body. I don't remember what happened. That's our body way of protecting you and saying, okay, Dominique is in a very dangerous, very difficult place where it's going to be a lot of harm to her body. Let's shut down everything and let's freeze all of her organs. Let's freeze her senses. Let's freeze all these sensations so she does not have to feel all this torture, so she doesn't have to feel all this trauma. That's how our body protects us. Our nervous system wasn't meant to be completely triggered and make us feel like our life's in danger just by going through everyday challenges. It's life, right? This world isn't perfect. We live in the real world where things happen. And you don't have to go into fight or flight every single time. You actually have the power to choose how trauma affects you because it's the meaning that you give it. It's the safety that's in your body. And you and only you have the power to regulate your nervous system, to create safety in your body. And this is exactly the work that I teach. So if you want to learn more about how my pivot framework guides you step by step to help you not only release the trauma that you have stuck in your body, but then to also learn the resources so you sustain that safety in your body. So you sustain no longer getting covered up in trauma so that you really, truly heal from anxiety. So until next time, one step, one day, one pivot at a time. And just another reminder that everything I teach is about your internal world. You have everything you need inside you to create the life that you desire.